In the autumn of 1990, the Colorado Rockies blazed with golden aspen leaves against towering granite peaks, their snow-capped summits already warning of the harsh winter to come. This is the story of Master Sergeant Michael James Mick O'Sullivan, a 42-year-old Army veteran whose love for the mountains would lead him into the heart of one of America's most unforgiving wilderness areas, and into a mystery that would haunt his family for 30 years. Mick lived in a small cabin outside of Estes Park, Colorado, just 8 miles from the entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park. Every morning, he would wake before sunrise, brew his coffee in a battered metal cup that had followed him through 2 tours in Vietnam, and step onto his porch to watch the alpenglow paint the peaks in shades of pink and gold. His neighbors remember him as a quiet, methodical man who found peace in the mountains after the chaos of war. Born in Boston to Irish immigrants, Mick had enlisted in the Army straight out of high school in 1966. He served 2 tours in Vietnam as a communications specialist, earning a Bronze Star for valor during the Tet Offensive. After his discharge, in 1971, he had drifted for several years, struggling with what would later be recognized as post-traumatic stress disorder. The mountains of Colorado had become his sanctuary, the place where he found the silence and solitude he needed to heal. Mick worked as a wilderness guide and survival instructor, teaching outdoor skills to corporate groups, scout troops, and military veterans. His expertise in wilderness survival was legendary among the outdoor community in northern Colorado. He could start a fire in a snowstorm, find water in the desert, and navigate by the stars with the precision of an ancient mariner. Friends often joked that Mick could survive anywhere, under any conditions. His routine was predictably independent. He worked sporadically, taking clients when he needed money but preferring to spend his time alone in the backcountry. He had never married, explaining to friends that the war had taken something from him that he couldn't give to another person. His closest relationship was with his younger sister, Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy, who lived in Denver with her husband and 2 children. Mick called Patricia every Sunday evening without fail, their conversations ranging from family news to his latest mountain adventures. If you enjoy real mysteries like this one, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any cases. On the morning of October 12, 1990, Mick followed a routine he had practiced hundreds of times before. He loaded his weathered backpack with survival gear, checked his compass and topographic maps, and headed out for what he told his neighbor, retired rancher Bill Henderson, would be a short reconnaissance trip to scout winter camping locations in the high country. Mick was planning to establish a series of emergency shelters throughout the park's backcountry, part of a volunteer program he had developed with the National Park Service. These shelters would provide life-saving refuge for hikers caught in sudden mountain storms. It was exactly the kind of practical life-saving work that gave Mick purpose in his post-military life. Henderson later recalled that Mick seemed in unusually good spirits that morning. He was excited about this shelter project, Henderson told investigators, said it might prevent other people from going through what he'd experienced in the jungle. Mick didn't talk much about the war, but when he did, you could tell it still ate at him. Mick packed his usual equipment, a military-issue sleeping bag rated to minus 20 degrees, a portable stove, emergency rations for 5 days, his Vietnam-era compass, and detailed topographic maps of the area he planned to explore. He also carried a first-generation GPS device, cutting-edge technology that few civilians owned in 1990. The GPS was a gift from his sister Patricia, who worried about his solo trips into increasingly remote areas. He left his cabin at 7:30 in the morning, driving his Army surplus Jeep equipped with snow chains and emergency gear. His planned route would take him to the wild basin area of Rocky Mountain National Park, a rugged region known for its pristine alpine lakes and challenging terrain. Mick had told Henderson he expected to return by October 15th, giving himself 3 days to complete his survey work. Mick's last confirmed sighting was at the Wild Basin Ranger Station, where he checked in with Ranger Susan Martinez at 9:15 in the morning. Ranger Martinez remembered the encounter clearly because Mick had stopped to report a damaged trail marker he had noticed on his drive-in, demonstrating the kind of attention to detail that made him valuable to the Park Service. He seemed prepared and confident, Martinez later told investigators. We talked about the weather forecast. There was a storm system moving in, but it wasn't expected to hit until the weekend. Mick said he'd be well out of the backcountry before any serious weather arrived. But the weather forecast proved dramatically wrong. A massive early-season blizzard, driven by an unexpected convergence of Arctic air masses, slammed into the Colorado Rockies on the evening of October 13th, nearly 24 hours ahead of predictions. The storm brought hurricane-force winds, temperatures that plummeted to minus 15 degrees, and over 3 feet of snow in higher elevations. When Mick failed to return by October 16th, Henderson contacted the National Park Service. The search began immediately, but the blizzard had created conditions that made rescue operations extremely dangerous. Winds exceeding 60 miles per hour and continued heavy snowfall grounded helicopters and made travel on foot nearly impossible. The initial search team, led by search and rescue coordinator Jake Williams, didn't reach Mick's planned area until October 19th, a full week after he had disappeared. They found his Jeep in the Wild Basin parking area, buried under 4 feet of snow but otherwise undisturbed. Inside the vehicle, they discovered Mick's wallet containing his driver's license and $237 in cash, along with a thermos still half full of coffee. The search for Mick became one of the most challenging missing person operations in Rocky Mountain National Park history. The early blizzard had fundamentally altered the landscape, burying trails under deep snow and creating avalanche conditions that persisted for weeks. Search teams using snowshoes and skis combed thousands of acres of wilderness, following Mick's most likely routes based on the maps found in his Jeep. The Colorado National Guard was called in to assist, providing helicopters with specialized cold weather equipment once flying conditions improved. Ground teams included some of the most experienced mountaineers and search and rescue specialists in the state, many of whom had trained with Mick himself over the years. "We all knew Mick's reputation," Williams explained to reporters at the time. "If anyone could survive in those conditions, it would be him. That gave us hope, but it also made the search more difficult because we couldn't predict where he might have gone to find shelter." The searchers discovered several pieces of evidence over the following weeks that suggested Mick had been moving deeper into the backcountry when the storm hit. A piece of military-issue webbing was found caught on a tree branch about 2 miles from the parking area, and searchers found what appeared to be the remains of a small survival fire at a rock outcropping another mile further into the wilderness. Most significantly, they discovered Mick's GPS device wedged in rocks near Estes Cone, a prominent peak about 4 miles from where his Jeep was parked. The device had been damaged, apparently by a fall or impact, and its memory had been corrupted. However, the location where it was found suggested that Mick had been attempting to reach higher ground, possibly seeking shelter from the storm. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Department took over the investigation in November as the search transitioned from rescue to recovery. Detective Lieutenant Robert Bob Chen, a decorated investigator with extensive experience in mountain rescue operations, was assigned as the lead investigator. Chen had served in the Marine Corps before joining law enforcement and had a deep understanding of military mindset and survival training. Mick's case was different from typical missing hiker situations, Chen explained in later interviews. Most people who get lost in the mountains either panic and make fatal mistakes, or they stay put and wait for rescue. But Mick had the training and experience to keep moving, to adapt to changing conditions. That made him harder to track, but it also meant he might have survived longer than an ordinary person. The first major theory focused on the possibility that Mick had been caught in an avalanche. The October blizzard had created unstable snow conditions throughout the high country, and several significant avalanches had been triggered by the storm. Search teams used specialized probes and avalanche dogs to search the most likely avalanche zones, but they found no evidence of Mick or his equipment. The second theory suggested that Mick might have fallen into one of the area's many rock crevasses or hidden ravines, natural traps that could be concealed by blowing snow. The rugged terrain of the Wild Basin area contained numerous geological hazards that could easily trap an unwary hiker, especially in low visibility conditions. As winter deepened and search operations became impossible, investigators began exploring other possibilities. They interviewed everyone who had known Mick in Colorado, looking for any signs of personal problems, unusual behavior in the weeks before his disappearance. Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy, Mick's sister, was questioned extensively about her brother's state of mind. However, she insisted that Mick had seemed as stable and content as she had ever seen him. The mountains had given him peace, she told investigators. He wasn't the same troubled man who came back from Vietnam. He had found his place in the world. Investigators also explored the possibility that Mick's disappearance might be connected to his military background. The late 1980s and early 90s were a time of significant geopolitical change, with the Cold War ending and military personnel sometimes becoming targets for foreign intelligence services. However, a thorough review of Mick's service record revealed no classified assignments or sensitive information that would make him a target. The case took an unexpected turn in 1992, when hikers discovered human remains in a remote area of the park, about 8 miles from where Mick had last been seen. The discovery generated intense media attention and brought Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy from Denver with hopes that her brother's fate might finally be known. However, forensic analysis revealed that the remains belonged to a climber who had disappeared in the 1970s, providing closure for another family but leaving the O'Sullivan family still without answers. Detective Chen worked the case for over a decade, following up on hundreds of tips and reported sightings. The case generated significant public interest, partly because of Mick's military background and survival expertise, and partly because of the dramatic circumstances of his disappearance during the historic October blizzard. "I probably investigated 50 different theories over the years," Chen recalled. Everything from the possibility that he'd been kidnapped by survivalist groups who wanted his expertise, to the idea that he deliberately disappeared to start a new life somewhere else. None of them held up under scrutiny. One particularly persistent theory suggested that Mick had been suffering from delayed onset PTSD and had gone into the mountains to end his life. This theory gained support from some mental health professionals, who pointed out that suicide rates among Vietnam veterans were significantly higher than the general population. However, people who knew Mick well, including his sister and his clients, rejected this possibility. Mick had found his peace, Patricia insisted during multiple interviews. The mountains weren't where he went to die. They were where he went to live. He had plans, projects he was working on. He was talking about maybe writing a book about survival techniques. That's not someone who's planning to end their life. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, advances in search technology brought new hope to the investigation. Ground-penetrating radar allowed searchers to look beneath the snow and soil for evidence, while improved GPS technology helped map previously inaccessible areas of the park. DNA analysis became more sophisticated, allowing investigators to identify human remains from smaller and more degraded samples. In 2005, 15 years after Mick's disappearance, the case received renewed attention when the Discovery Channel featured his story in a documentary about missing military veterans. The program generated hundreds of tips from viewers across the country, but again, none led to significant breakthroughs. The emotional toll of the long investigation weighed heavily on everyone involved. Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy had aged visibly over the years, her hope gradually transforming into a kind of resigned acceptance. She had created a memorial to Mick in her Denver home, displaying his bronze star alongside photographs from his mountain adventures. For the first 10 years, every phone call from Colorado made my heart race, Patricia explained during one of Detective Chen's visits. I thought every ring might be someone calling to say they found him. After 20 years, I stopped expecting good news. I just wanted to know what happened, so we could finally say goodbye properly. The breakthrough that would finally solve Mick's case came from an unexpected source in September of 2020. Derek Thompson, a 28-year-old mountain biker from Fort Collins, was exploring remote trails in the Wild Basin area with his girlfriend Ashley Rodriguez when climate change revealed what had been hidden for 3 decades. The summer of 2020 had been one of the hottest on record in Colorado, with temperatures reaching unprecedented levels even at high altitudes. Ancient ice formations that had persisted for centuries were melting rapidly, exposing landscapes that hadn't been visible in living memory. Thompson and Rodriguez were experienced backcountry enthusiasts who often explored areas that were off-limits to most visitors. They had obtained special permits to bike in the Wild Basin area as part of a university research project studying the effects of climate change on alpine ecosystems. On the morning of September 14th, Thompson was navigating a particularly challenging section of trail when he noticed something unusual protruding from what had once been a permanent ice field near the base of a granite cliff. The ice had melted significantly over the summer, exposing rocks and debris that had been frozen for decades. As Thompson got closer to investigate, he realized he was looking at something that shouldn't have been there. A small metallic object that reflected the morning sun with an unmistakably artificial gleam. When he reached the spot, he found a pair of military dog tags, partially frozen in the remaining ice but clearly visible. Thompson, who came from a military family, immediately recognized the significance of his discovery. The dog tags were weathered and corroded, but the stamped information was still legible. O'Sullivan, Michael J., followed by a service number and blood type that matched military formatting from the Vietnam era. The couple immediately contacted park rangers, who arrived within hours to secure the scene. When Detective Chen, now a sergeant with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, received the call about the discovery, he felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. After 30 years, they finally had concrete evidence of what had happened to Mick O'Sullivan. The location where the dog tags were found told a compelling story. The ice field was situated at the base of a steep granite face that experienced frequent rockfall, especially during storms. The area was about 6 miles from where Mick's GPS device had been discovered, following a logical route that someone with his wilderness experience might have taken while trying to find shelter from the blizzard. Forensic analysis of the dog tags confirmed that they had belonged to Michael O'Sullivan, but more importantly, the condition of the metal and the mineral deposits on their surface provided clues about how long they had been frozen in the ice. Glaciologists brought in to examine the ice field estimated that the tags had been frozen in place for approximately 30 years, consistent with the timeline of Mick's disappearance. Dr. Sarah Kim, a forensic anthropologist from the University of Colorado, was brought in to analyze the discovery site. Her examination revealed additional evidence that had been preserved in the ice, fragments of military-issue fabric, a piece of leather that appeared to be from a boot, and most significantly, a small piece of bone that DNA analysis would later confirm belonged to Mick. The evidence suggests that Mr. O'Sullivan reached this location during the October 1990 blizzard. Dr. Kim explained to investigators. The ice formation and the distribution of artifacts indicate that he may have taken shelter at the base of this cliff when the storm intensified. Unfortunately, this area is known for rockfall activity, especially during severe weather events. The forensic evidence painted a picture of Mick's final hours that was both tragic and heroic. He had apparently made it much further into the backcountry than searchers had initially believed possible, demonstrating the survival skills that had made him legendary among Colorado's outdoor community. However, the same storm that had hampered rescue efforts had ultimately proven too much even for his expertise. The discovery of Mick's dog tags provided the closure that his family had sought for 3 decades, but it also raised important questions about search and rescue operations in extreme weather conditions. The location where his remains were found had been searched multiple times over the years, but the ice field had concealed the evidence until climate change finally revealed it. Detective Chen, who had worked on Mick's case for most of his career, traveled to Denver to meet with Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy, now 73 years old, and the mother of 3 grown children who had never met their uncle. The meeting was emotionally difficult for everyone involved, but Patricia expressed gratitude for finally having answers about her brother's fate. "I always knew he didn't just walk away," Patricia said through tears. "Mick was too responsible, too connected to family to just disappear without a word. Knowing that he died doing what he loved, trying to help other people by scouting those shelter locations, that's very much who he was. He was always trying to save people." The resolution of Mick's case had broader implications for search and rescue operations in mountainous regions. The National Park Service used the case to develop new protocols for searching in areas with permanent ice and snow, recognizing that climate change would likely reveal more evidence from historical missing person cases. The case also became a focal point for discussions about the mental health support available to military veterans. While Mick's disappearance was ultimately determined to be accidental, the long investigation had highlighted the challenges faced by veterans readjusting to civilian life and the importance of community support systems. Dr. Kim published a paper in the Journal of Forensic Sciences titled "Climate Change and Cold Case Resolution: Evidence Recovery from Melting Ice Fields." The paper became required reading for forensic investigators working in alpine environments and helped establish new protocols for evidence preservation in changing environmental conditions. The O'Sullivan case demonstrates that climate change is not just an environmental issue, it's also a forensic issue, Dr. Kim wrote. As ice fields and glaciers continue to retreat, we're likely to see more historical evidence exposed. This creates both opportunities for solving cold cases and challenges for preserving newly discovered evidence. The discovery also sparked renewed interest in other missing person cases from the Colorado Rockies. The Colorado Missing Person Unit established a new initiative to systematically search areas where ice melt had exposed previously hidden terrain, leading to the resolution of 3 additional cases from the 1970s and 80s. Derek Thompson, the mountain biker whose discovery had solved the case, became an advocate for backcountry safety and climate change awareness. He used his social media following to educate other outdoor enthusiasts about the signs of historical human activity they might encounter in changing mountain environments. Finding Mick's dog tags changed my perspective on mountain biking, Thompson said. I realized that every time I'm out in the backcountry, I might be the person who discovers something important, something that could bring closure to a family that's been wondering and waiting for decades. The ice field where Mick's remains were discovered became the subject of extensive scientific study. Researchers from the National Center for Atmospheric Research analyzed ice core samples from the site to better understand historical weather patterns and the effects of climate change on high-altitude environments. The investigation into Mick's disappearance had consumed significant resources over 3 decades. The Colorado Division of Emergency Management estimated that more than 800 hours of search and rescue operations had been dedicated to looking for him, involving hundreds of volunteers and professional rescuers. The total cost of the search operations exceeded $400,000, not including the countless hours donated by volunteer searchers. Detective Chen had personally followed up on over 200 tips and leads related to Mick's case during his career. He had traveled throughout Colorado and into neighboring states, interviewing witnesses, examining potential evidence, and consulting with experts in wilderness, survival, military psychology, and forensic science. Every few years, something would happen that would give us new hope, Chen recalled. A hiker would find a piece of equipment that might have belonged to Mick, or someone would come forward with information about seeing him in the weeks before he disappeared. I probably chased down 100 different leads that didn't pan out. One of the most promising leads had come in 2007, when construction workers building a new visitor center found what appeared to be military-issue equipment buried in the foundation area. The discovery generated significant media attention and brought Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy from Denver with hopes that the items might belong to her brother. However, analysis revealed that the equipment was from a different era and had no connection to Mick's case. Another significant lead emerged in 2012 when melting snow revealed human remains near Long's Peak, about 15 miles from where Mick had disappeared. The remains were badly decomposed, but appeared to be from a male of approximately the right age and build. DNA testing revealed that the remains belonged to a different missing hiker from the 2000s, providing closure for another family, but leaving the O'Sullivan family still without answers. The resolution of Mick's case also had significant impact on the veteran community in Colorado. The Colorado Veterans Alliance used his story to highlight the challenges faced by combat veterans, readjusting to civilian life and the healing power of outdoor activities. They established the Michael O'Sullivan Memorial Fund, which provides outdoor recreation opportunities for veterans dealing with PTSD and other service-related challenges. The fund sponsors wilderness therapy programs, outdoor skills training, and backcountry expeditions designed to help veterans find the same peace in nature that Mick had discovered. Over the past 3 years, the program has served more than 100 veterans, with many reporting significant improvements in their mental health and quality of life. Mick's story resonates with a lot of veterans, explained program director and fellow Vietnam veteran Tom Martinez. He found healing in the mountains, and while his story ended tragically, his legacy continues to help other veterans find their own path to peace. The National Park Service established a memorial plaque near the Wild Basin Ranger Station where Mick had last been seen alive. The plaque reads, "In memory of Master Sergeant Michael J. O'Sullivan, Bronze Star recipient and wilderness educator, whose dedication to helping others navigate life's challenges continues to inspire new generations of outdoor enthusiasts and veterans seeking healing in nature's embrace." Today, the area where Mick's remains were discovered has become a pilgrimage site for veterans and outdoor enthusiasts who knew his story. The continuing effects of climate change mean that the ice field continues to shrink each year, serving as a visible reminder of the environmental changes that revealed the truth about his disappearance. The case of Michael O'Sullivan's disappearance serves as a powerful reminder that the mountains keep their secrets well, but climate change is forcing them to give up those secrets at an unprecedented rate. For 30 years, a melting ice field in the Colorado Rockies held the answer to a mystery that had puzzled investigators and haunted a family. When that answer finally emerged, it came not through advanced investigative techniques, but through the inexorable process of environmental change that is reshaping landscapes around the world. Mick's story lives on in the safety protocols that now govern backcountry operations, in the memorial fund that bears his name, and in the understanding that even the most experienced outdoors people are vulnerable to the sudden and violent weather changes that characterize high mountain environments. His legacy also serves as a testament to the dedication of search and rescue personnel who never stopped looking for missing people, even when cases seem hopeless. The scientific community's interest in Mick's case extended beyond forensic applications. The ice field where his remains were discovered became a crucial study site for understanding the rapid pace of climate change in high-altitude environments. Researchers from the National Snow and Ice Data Center established monitoring equipment at the site, tracking the rate of ice melt and its implications for both environmental science and forensic investigations. Dr. Michael Chen, a climatologist at the University of Colorado and no relation to Detective Chen, led a comprehensive study of the ice field's retreat over the past century. Using historical photographs, satellite imagery, and ice core analysis, his team determined that the ice field had lost over 60% of its mass since 1950, with the rate of melting accelerating dramatically after 2000. The O'Sullivan case represents a perfect example of how climate change is literally uncovering history, Dr. Chen explained. Ice fields like this one have been natural archives, preserving evidence of human activity for decades or even centuries. As they disappear, we have a narrow window of opportunity to recover this information before it's lost forever. This research led to the establishment of the Rocky Mountain Cold Case Initiative, a collaborative effort between law enforcement agencies and climate scientists to systematically search areas where retreating ice and snow might reveal evidence from historical missing person cases. The initiative has already led to discoveries in several other locations throughout the Colorado Rockies. The psychological impact of Mick's case resolution extended far beyond his immediate family. The Vietnam veteran community in Colorado had adopted Mick as a symbolic figure over the years, representing both the struggles and the resilience of combat veterans seeking peace in civilian life. His death confirmation prompted widespread reflection on the challenges faced by veterans and the importance of community support systems. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a psychologist specializing in veteran mental health at the Denver Veterans Affairs Medical Center, used Mick's story in her research on how outdoor activities can serve as therapy for combat-related trauma. Her study showed that veterans who participated in wilderness programs showed significant improvements in PTSD symptoms, depression, and overall quality of life. Michael O'Sullivan's story illustrates both the healing power of nature and its inherent dangers, Dr. Walsh wrote in her groundbreaking paper. While the mountains provided him with the peace he couldn't find elsewhere, they also claimed his life when conditions turned deadly. This paradox is central to understanding how veterans relate to risk and healing in their post-service lives. The case also had significant implications for search and rescue training programs throughout the Rocky Mountain region. The Colorado Search and Rescue Association developed new protocols, specifically addressing searches in areas with permanent ice and snow, recognizing that traditional search patterns might miss evidence that could remain hidden for decades. Jake Williams, who had led the original search efforts for Mick in 1990 and was now the state coordinator for search and rescue operations, reflected on how the case had changed his approach to long-term missing person investigations. Now, the O'Sullivan case taught us that we need to think in geological timescales, not just human timescales, Williams explained. Evidence doesn't always stay where we expect it to be. Ice moves, snow shifts, and landscapes change. What we can't find today might be revealed tomorrow or 30 years from now. This philosophy led to the development of new documentation protocols for search operations, with teams now creating detailed records not just of areas searched, but of areas that couldn't be searched due to environmental conditions. These deferred search zones are now regularly revisited as conditions change, leading to the discovery of evidence in several other historical cases. The financial impact of Mick's case extended well beyond the immediate search and rescue costs. The 30-year investigation had involved resources from multiple agencies, including the National Park Service, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and various federal agencies that had assisted with the military aspects of the case. A comprehensive analysis conducted by the Colorado Division of Emergency Management revealed that the total cost of the investigation, including personnel time, equipment, and forensic analysis, exceeded $1.2 million over 3 decades. This figure didn't include the thousands of hours donated by volunteer searchers, the military veterans who had contributed their expertise, or the academic researchers who had studied various aspects of the case. However, officials emphasized that the case had generated significant value beyond its resolution. The search techniques developed during the O'Sullivan investigation had been applied to dozens of other cases, leading to successful rescues and recoveries. The training programs inspired by his case had improved the safety and effectiveness of search and rescue operations throughout the region. The technological evolution witnessed during the 30-year investigation provided a fascinating timeline of how forensic science and search technology had advanced. When Mick disappeared in 1990, GPS devices were cutting-edge technology available only to military and specialized civilian users. DNA analysis was in its infancy, and satellite imagery was classified military technology. By the time his case was resolved in 2020, search teams had access to drones, advanced GPS systems, ground-penetrating radar, sophisticated DNA analysis techniques, and high-resolution satellite imagery that could track environmental changes over decades. The contrast highlighted how technological advancement had revolutionized missing person investigations. Detective Chen, who had witnessed this technological evolution firsthand during his work on Mick's case, often spoke to police academy classes about the importance of patience and persistence in long-term investigations. Technology will continue to advance, Chen would tell new investigators. Techniques we can't imagine today will be routine in 20 years. Sometimes, the best thing we can do is preserve evidence carefully and wait for science to catch up. The O'Sullivan case is proof that patience and persistence can eventually pay off, even after decades. The case also sparked important discussions about the environmental ethics of evidence recovery in sensitive ecological areas. The ice field where Mick's remains were found was part of a fragile alpine ecosystem that had been largely undisturbed for centuries. The forensic excavation required careful coordination between law enforcement, Park Service officials, and environmental scientists to minimize ecological impact. This collaboration led to the development of new protocols for evidence recovery in environmentally sensitive areas, balancing the need for forensic investigation with the responsibility to preserve natural habitats. These protocols have since been adopted by law enforcement agencies throughout the western United States. The memorial service for Mick O'Sullivan, held 30 years after his disappearance, drew over 300 people to a mountain meadow near Estes Park. Attendees included family members, fellow veterans, search and rescue volunteers who had looked for him over the decades, and outdoor enthusiasts who had been inspired by his story. Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy, now a grandmother, spoke about how the long search for her brother had shaped her family's understanding of sacrifice and service. Her children and grandchildren had grown up hearing stories about their Uncle Mick, and his disappearance had instilled in them a deep appreciation for the dedication of the people who never stopped looking for him. Mick's story became our family's story, Patricia said during the service. It taught us about courage, about the importance of never giving up on the people we love, and about the incredible generosity of strangers who dedicate their lives to helping others. The search and rescue volunteers, the investigators, the scientists who finally helped us understand what happened, they all became part of our extended family. The service also featured remarks from several of the veterans who had been helped by the Michael O'Sullivan Memorial Fund. Their testimonials provided powerful evidence of how Mick's legacy continued to make a difference in the lives of combat veterans seeking healing and purpose after their military service. Master Sergeant Robert Torres, a Iraq War veteran who had struggled with severe PTSD, credited the Memorial Fund's Wilderness Therapy program with saving his life. "I was in a dark place when I found this program," Torres said. "Being in the mountains, learning the skills that Mick taught, it gave me back my sense of purpose. Mick may be gone, but his spirit is still out there, helping veterans like me find our way home." As Patricia O'Sullivan Murphy reflected during the memorial service held for her brother 30 years after his disappearance, "Mick always said the mountains would teach you everything you needed to know if you just listened carefully enough. In the end, they taught us about him too. They kept him safe all these years until we were ready to bring him home."